Dear diarrhea, diary full of shit. Just play along himself now. I know what else. You I'm so legit. I don't have anything to say, so I'm going to say some shit regarding the jobs and stuff that I'm kind of, the YouTube videos that I'm kind of watching about, the economy and the job market and AI and layoffs and entry level pay and this, that, and the other. As far as AI goes, that's not really affecting blue collar type work right now. Obviously, these jobs that no longer exist due to AI in the white collar world, these people are going to move over into blue collar. Um, just like that movie, I forget what it was called, but it had Ben Affleck in it, where a bunch of people were laid off, and he ended up taking a job as a carpenter. But so I'm not too worried about that as far as AI, drilling holes, in beams and threading wire and, stripping wires and screwing them down into clamps, connected to circuit breakers and stuff. I don't see AI taking over that sort of shit. They have robots that assemble cars on assembly lines, but that's the product going through the assembly line. That robot just does the same shit, They got a different assembly line for different models of cars, or maybe they tweak it a little bit, crank out this many cars of this model, that many cars of that model, however that all works. But doing construction projects, I just don't see, somebody hauling in a robot, on little rubber tank tracks or whatever, and just turning it loose in a house, and let it do its thing. I know they have like Roomba, vacuum cleaners and stuff, but I just don't see it happening, at least not for a long time. And as far as self-driving cars, like for the trucking world, that's been 2 years away for like the last 8 to 10 years. Um, Two things, my thoughts on that, and these are just my thoughts. I could be wrong. Number one, I still think it's a long ways away before it's like in full swing, and it would really affect, it might affect, niche, companies in niche areas. Like right now, UPS might have a section of, interstate, between A and B, that has self-autonomous trucks, but I don't think it'll be something that en masse truck drivers will have to worry about for a long time. I think just like AI, nobody wants to be left out. They want to be part of, the stock prices, for people, hyping it up right now. And, it'll be big for a while. Maybe it'll turn into something big. It's too big to be left behind. Um, but I think once it's on the scene, I do believe it's only a matter of time before there's some catastrophic crashes, and there'll be, too many that they'll be able to cover up, and companies won't want to associate their reputation and their business with that technology, and the stock will crash, and it'll go back to the drawing board. They'll still work on it, but I don't think they have the fail safe capability and the redundancy capabilities to handle different obstacles, situations that arise, traffic, weather, um, just I just don't think a camera can anticipate stuff like a human can. It's one thing if you're in the air, three-dimensional space, but if you're on the ground, two-dimensional space, or maybe I'm saying that wrong. You know what I mean? It's way more, because I know there's drones and stuff right now that are like AI and, all that shit where there's no pilot actually piloting them. But I just don't see it happening. I think it'll be introduced, but not for a while. And then I think it'll fail pretty catastrophic. And it'll be back to the drawing board, for another 5 to 10 years before they give it another whack. And at that point, people will be like, I don't know. See, this is what you got to ask yourself. Would you get on an airplane without a pilot? At least not one, sitting there, ready to take over. Would you get on a bus without a driver? At least not one sitting there ready to take over. And that pilot and that bus driver aren't going to be making their regular, salary, because it's like, well, as you are as a babysitter. So you'll be, your salary will be cut in half. Now there'll always be, people who will take those jobs, or maybe people who weren't in the trucking industry, your grocery, bagger will be like, well, shit, I'll sit there behind the wheel, for, $50,000 a year, because right now I'm only making 30,000. I can't make it. I have to have two jobs. So your regular full-time truck drivers will be like, fuck that. And in the meantime, they've established lifestyles that require them to make, the money that they're making. But you'll have, janitors and, security guards, at fucking, Disneyland, who are, working two jobs, or just somehow manage to, get by on like, 40,000 a year, who are like, they'll take those jobs. Fuck yeah, so there'll be people to take those jobs. It's not like, well, no truck driver will work for that, and blah, blah, blah. That's just the way that goes. And same thing with AI. Again, they had to kind of rush it in because they don't want to get left behind with China and India and all that shit. Again, I think it'll be useful in a lot of ways. Where you have one person kind of using AI to help them instead of a crew of 5 to 10 people. You have 1 to 3 people using AI, whether it be in the white collar world or blue collar, like with some sort of machine, But again, I think the more responsibilities you give AI, the more it's going to, make decisions that weren't actually the right decision, because it's still just a machine, that was programmed by a human. It's one thing to be able to beat the world's best chess player, in 10 seconds, but I just don't see it. I think it'll get, worse before it gets worse, and then it'll get better, for humans. But I just don't really see it. I mean, it is what it is. That's just my opinion on that. But, like me, with the railroad shit, I mean, railroads seem like that would be the most automated thing you could do, because the trains are on a track. I mean, they've already got, remote locomotives. You've probably seen the signs, every now and then at a crossing, it'll see, remote locomotives operated in this area. Do not be alarmed if you see one without a, engineer or whatever. So those are already in full swing because it's on a track, and it's just like a big video game. Now, there's other things that it would be harder to do that with, like heavy equipment, although in theory it can be done, with cameras and remotes. And there would be a benefit to that, like in the mining industry, because it would be safer if you're underground, in one of those big flat loaders, and there's no operator, then you don't have to be so concerned about, cave-in. As far as, loss of human life, it'll still be a loss of time and money, money to salvage what happened, and you're not making productivity. Well, you put it on hold. So depending on how many, stockpiles of material you got, going out and being loaded on trains and shit, maybe you're not going to lose money because you're just depleting your stockpiles, but it's going to cost you money. But at least you didn't, lose a human life, and you don't have to bring in other, emergency services to do that. It's just like, shit, we got to take, 10 days and dig out this cave-in, and pull the machine out, and might have to make some repairs on that, but, it is what it is. But the thing is, like I said, my problem is I'm an older dude, and you know, I'm familiar with all that shit. I've got aptitude for it, you know, construction, welding, you know. I mean, like I said, wiring, roofing, sheetrocking, insulation, concrete work, you know, equipment type work. You know, I'm familiar with all of it, you know, because I've done it, you know, just as a weekend warrior shit, you know, over the years. Um, but as a professional, you know, I'm entry level. And, you know, I'm one of those dudes, you know, who's kind of established a lifestyle. You know, I've got a mortgage now. Um, you know, well, you know, like I said, I'm single, no wife, no kids. I don't have any debt. Okay, the only quote unquote debt that I have is my mortgage. You know, and every month, you know, there's bills that you know need to be paid. Now that's not debt. You know, because debt, you know, like your credit card bills and stuff, you can, you know, choose to pay the minimum, and that's how debt, you know, gets built up. Is nobody can afford to pay off their credit card bill, so they just build and build and build. You know, but you can like pay off debt. You know, you can come up with a plan, you know, to pay that off. If you don't, you know, you can't opt to, you know, tell the electrical company you only want to pay them $45 that month, you know, and you know that doesn't work that way. You pay it in full, or they shut your electricity off. It's the same thing with your mortgage, you know. At least as far as I know. Maybe there's other options, you know, for stuff like that, but things tend to get kind of complicated. You know, like I said, that's not really something I've never had any fucking interest in. You know, um, just my whole life. You know, zero down, no payments for 6 months. You know, and I remember, you know, even as a little kid, you know, you'd hear these commercials, you know, for buying furniture. You know, because it cost, you know, a bunch of money to, you know, buy those furniture sets. You know, as I said, you know, Katie Boo, you know, the upstairs will be yours. You know, if I want to troll and all that shit. And once we kick this off, we're so close. We're so close. Let's not give up on each other now. Love finds a way. And that's so bad. You know I'm full of shit, right? Hey, I'm off the hook. I said, you know, you dumb bitch. You knew. You got that girl. You got that sweet, innocent Christian, good Christian girl to fall in love with you, asshole. She passed up opportunities for you because she thought you were legit. Yeah, don't do that. Go the way of the butthead. Hedge your funds. Get married. Get pregnant. You know, just all that shit. But you know, heart wants what the heart wants. You know, but in the meantime, life rolls on. Man, what's that song? It seems like there's a song. Probably a bunch of songs. Oh, that's a Cottonmouth King song. Life rolls on, life rolls on. Something like that. It's something. What you gonna do when you can't get high now? Something like that. I'll have to look it up. It's kind of. It's not really one of my favorites. It's all about the weed. Watch these bitches get burned like the bell on my lighter. Anyway, there's a good ICP song that I'll have to like. I'll put it in the ASMR so you can check it out if you want to. Because I have some folders where I've got public music, but I've also got others that isn't. Like I think I've got one that's nostalgic music that's public, and just one a music one that's public. But I also have nostalgic that's not, and I've got a few that's not. But it's a good song. It's kind of got that old school sound. Um, I'll post it up for you. I think you'll enjoy it. It's Shaggy Two Dope and some other dude because they still make music. You know, it's Shaggy Two Dope or Shaggy and Violent J, and you know, kind of the theme. You know, is the Dark Carnival, the Six Jokers cards. You know, this, that, and the other. I found out about them through the Great Malenko, which is the fourth Joker's card. But they've got six of them. But then what are you going to do, you know, when the six Joker's cards drop? You just going to end your music career? Fuck no. So they got other little, you know, CDs. And I'm not sure if they're still making music, but Anyway, it is what it is. I think you'll enjoy it. You seem like the type of good Christian girl who would enjoy, uh, the type of music that I'm going to post up there for you. I think it's called Just Another Day. Shaggy. I'll post it. I'll put it in the ASMR for you. You'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. Kick back at the end of the day, pour you a nice little glass of red wine. Red wine. All of the time. Red wine. You ever heard that song? Something like that. Some Jamaican dude. And just kick back, you and your dog, with its little sweater, and listen to some of that. That old school sound. Just kick back, relax, listen to it before you turn in for the night. Or maybe it'll do just the opposite for you. You'll be going in, listen to it on the way into work. How you doing, Katie? What? Doing great. Yeah. Let's kick some fucking in. But I'm not that type of person who has to hype themselves up their music. Like sports and stuff. I would always just sit there in silence, close my eyes, and envision, what I was gonna do. So. And I still do that today. I meditate, you know, so to speak. I envision, basically, I envision violence. I envision getting jumped. I envision getting in knife fights. Why? I just do. I don't think I'm a tough guy or anything like that. But it's just something that I do every day. I take a little bit of time. Either at the end of the day. I generally don't like to do it before I go to bed because I like to. That's when I relax and I start thinking about holding you in my arms and your sweet, soft, tender, warm body pressed up against mine under the sheets. My dick getting hard, up against your butt cheeks. You'll just be like, oh, silly, Anyway, I hear dudes get like 7 erections during the night, so I'm gonna slowly floss your ass basically all night. Um, but you'll wake up, just sort of, there's my dick wedged between your butt cheeks. It's not my fault. It's just something that happens, but especially with you. But like I said, I'm not gonna hold you all night. Sometimes I'll be facing the other direction. That's another reason why making a baby bed is important. So neither one of us rolls over, on the baby. Now you're the type of girl who probably just won't move. You'll just be right there. Just because you're mama bear. But me, I will turn and face the other direction. Now, as far as a crib, and I've discussed all that shit. As far as being able to be alone, in a quiet room and stuff, and that's important. But and we'll mix it up and stuff, and that's a pretty common thing. People have the baby in the room. But I think a baby bed in the bed. That way, in case he or she gets a little cold or something, she starts to kind of rustle around and make some noise and kind of do that. You don't have to like get up and hold her and bring her into bed, and now she's all happy and content and making them little baby sounds and shit. Um, she's just right there, so you can just sort of pat her and, hush, hush, and this, that, and the other, just sort of comfort her. And, the bed is just right there, as far as sleeping, temperature wise, we'll have the room set at the right temperature of the house. As far when we take her out, we'll assume it's a girl, right? So we'll have the like disposable diapers when we go out. You'll have your little baby bag, all that shit, and the stroller and the formula and shit. Whether or not you want to breastfeed, I don't know. If you want to do that in public, maybe have a pump and you just take the formula with it. Maybe you want to buy baby bot formula and mix it. Whatever, I'll leave that up to you. But I think when we're home, at least when we sleep, we'll have the baby in cloth diapers, and that's it. Maybe the onesie, we'll experiment, because she's a little baby, so she's sensitive, right? So she'll have her own little blanket and stuff in the baby bed between us, and, we'll have the covers that are kind of over, but not like smothering her or anything. So we'll have to experiment how she sleeps best because that would be nice, but I don't know, um, how that's going to happen. Maybe she would get too cold If it was just her and her little cloth diaper, at least when she sleeps. Um, so maybe she'll need the baby onesie, you know. But I'm kind of thinking, I don't know. But anyway, fortunately, we don't have to worry about any of that shit because I'm just a troll. Don't do that sort of shit, and it's all completely fucking bullshit. So why do you talk about it? Why not? um, I'm right about all that shit. She sleeps so well. Yeah, it's because actually babies don't actually like sleeping in those plastic fucking diapers and shit. You know, at least when it's and we'll have to figure out when she's hungry and when she needs to poop and pee and all that stuff and peeing. I mean, because babies eat formula. There's logistics involved. And I can't tell you what those are. I can't make those up. That's stuff that you just have to figure out. Like, formula, you know what I mean? So, and then, but anyway, and you won't have to worry about that too because you're too old to have a kid and shit. So, when you do find a man, you know, oh, it's gonna be a gut punch for you because you'll be all happy. You'll be like, oh, it finally happened. I got married. I had my day. I had my wedding. I showed everybody that I can do it. I'm not just the black sheep of the family. I'll give mom grandbabies too, and then you'll have trouble conceiving, and he'll be some limp dick motherfucker with a low sperm count or some shit. You're old, and your eggs are all like, leave me alone. What are you doing? What do you expect from me? Oh, you want a baby? Why didn't you do this, 10, 15 fucking years ago, you old fucking hag? And again, it'll be such a gut punch for you because it'll be, the rug pulled out from under you. Oh, she finally did it. She managed to find a man and get pregnant. And, well, she can't even fucking do that. The dude that she chose, is a limp dick motherfucker. Because that'll like come to the surface. Is it him? Is it you? What's the deal? Do we need to do in vitro fertilization or whatever? And it'll come to bear that you both kind of suck. And you both fucked around and wasted too much time. And you'll be back to square one. Like, well, at least she's married and she has somebody to spend the rest of her life with. And eventually you'll come to despise him. And he'll still love you. He'll love and adore you. But you'll be disappointed. And you'll hate yourself, and just life will be a bitch for you. All over again. You'll have a couple years of bliss. Like a year and a half, 2 years, whatever, and then it'll just be fucking shit. But anyway, after that digress, as far as entry level shit and all that shit, whatnot, railroad shit, construction shit. Well, if I need to take time, if the over the road thing doesn't work out, 10, 15 years down the road, then I'll just take a month, 3 months, whatever it takes, go to fucking vocational school, find some program where I can, attend, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, crank that shit out, take my tests, get my certifications, become a welder, whatever. And then we're off to the fucking races. So I can kind of circumnavigate that, because I can just quit and not work, and I can explain that. Oh, I was going to vocational school, this, it's not a problem, So that kind of, that's how that works for me. Because where I'm at, I pretty much just been a truck driver my whole life, and now I'm an old motherfucker, and it's like everything's entry level. But I'm kind of above that, oh, I'm 22 years old, a young buck full of piss and vinegar. Sure, I'll take that job for $20 an hour, 12 hours a day, no lunch, no breaks, 6 days a week. I'm a winner. No, fuck that. But I do have options. So anyway, how you doing? You doing good? Good, good. How's the weather up there in Chicago? Lonely? I'm just messing. I know you got a man and shit anyway. But it's been mild, you know. I mean, I guess winter's not even really in full swing yet. You know, the first day of winter was December 22nd. But anyway, I'm 25 minutes in. You know, it's boy, it'd be something. You know?